What is something you witnessed that made you question reality and why? Story 1. I've never really been able to describe this properly, but I'll try. When I was around 15, I went to bed at about 1 a.m. As I was getting into bed, I looked out the window and suddenly everything flashed bright white, like the world inverted into a photo negative for about a second. I fell back onto my bed, and then maybe 1 or 2 seconds later, it was suddenly 7 a.m. I felt exactly as tired as I had just moments earlier. I've told people about it before, but it doesn't sound serious or dramatic. I just genuinely have no idea what happened. I had something similar happen. When I was around 10, I went to bed normally at about 10 p.m., and my mom said goodnight. I laid down, blinked, and suddenly my mom was back in my room saying, "Good morning." It was bright outside, and I was completely confused. I usually struggle to fall asleep, so I still remember that moment vividly and kind of hope it happens again someday. Story 2. Anytime I experience a false awakening, I'll wake up to my alarm, get out of bed, get dressed, eat breakfast, go to class, and live out a decent chunk of the day. And then I actually wake up. The dream is so realistic that when I finally wake for real, I'm unsure whether I'm still dreaming. It makes me question reality itself. How can I be sure I'm awake? The few lucid dreams I've had left me with a similar feeling. Oh my god, this happened to me a few times in elementary school. I'd dream an entire school day from start to finish, and the moment I got home, I'd wake up. It was always on during school days too. I'd get so annoyed that I'd just pretend to be sick and stay home, because I wasn't about to redo the same day twice. Story 3. I daydream a lot, but one time I swear I was crouched behind a short wall watching myself. Everything felt completely normal until I realized what I was seeing made no sense. I shook my head, confused, and suddenly realized I was the person I'd just been watching. I turned around instantly and saw the same wall I'd been looking from. I genuinely questioned my sanity that day, and even now it still creeps me out a bit. Story 4. I didn't exactly question reality, but my sense of it became deeply distorted. My brother died suddenly from a massive heart attack on his kitchen floor. He had no prior health issues. The grief hit me so hard that it altered how I perceived the world. Everything around me moved at about a quarter of normal speed, while I felt completely normal. This would come and go for about 2 weeks. I knew it wasn't real and understood why it was happening, but that didn't stop it. It felt like being trapped in the worst funhouse imaginable. Story 5. This one needs some background. I essentially lived an entire week inside a dream. It felt completely real. Emotions, exhaustion, everything. I even dreamed that I went to sleep and woke up tired, debating whether to go to school or stay in bed. After what felt like a full week, I woke up, went to school, and realized I was taking a test I had already completed the week before. Going to sleep on May 26th and waking up on May 19th seriously messed with my head. Ever since then, I occasionally question whether what I'm experiencing is real. I kept a small journal for a while, writing down what happened each day and checking it the next day to confirm it still existed. Even though it hasn't happened again in 5 years, I still get paranoid sometimes. Story 6. When I was 7, my cat died. He was my first real encounter with death, and before that, I didn't understand mortality at all. For a month or two afterward, I'd see him out of the corner of my eye, laying in the sun or looking out a window. Whenever I tried to pet him, he'd vanish. Eventually, my parents got new cats, and I stopped seeing him. I grew up working on farms and ranches, so I encountered death pretty young. After my first pony died in my arms, he was 40 years old and had just come back from a great packing trip. The farrier, a big Navajo guy who looked like he stepped out of an old movie, told me that animals stick around for a while after they die to make sure you're okay. When I told him I kept seeing my pony, that really comforted me as a kid. I stopped seeing him once I got my current horse. Story 7. When I was a kid, I woke up one night, or at least I think I did, and heard a flute playing outside my window. As it played, I started seeing musical notes floating in front of me. It felt incredibly surreal. I wasn't scared at all. It was actually very calming. I don't know if I was awake or dreaming, but it was definitely a real experience to me. Story 8. 2 nights ago, I dreamed I was in a parking lot talking to a woman who needed a quarter. I told her I'd get one. I woke up, walked to my desk, grabbed a quarter from my change bowl, went back to bed, and immediately slipped back into the same dream. I handed her the quarter. When I woke up again, the quarter was in my pocket. It completely blew my mind. Brains are weird. Story 9. I had an extremely vivid dream as a small child that confused me when I woke up. I had no memory of falling asleep. The dream began as a normal kindergarten day. My parents picked me up, and while we were driving, I saw a man being escorted down the street by massive tanks. He was sitting in a huge tub of boiling liquid, screaming as his skin bubbled. When I woke up, I couldn't immediately tell it was a dream. I genuinely believed it had happened and that I must have blacked out in the car. Story 10. I once came around a curve on the Washington, D.C. Beltway and saw a box truck speeding down the highway, completely engulfed in smoke and flames. When I was younger, around 15 to 18, I had a lot of trouble telling dreams from reality. I'd reference conversations that never happened or try to use things I never actually bought. Now, whenever I have to make an important decision, I dream about how it will play out beforehand, which leads to intense deja vu at least once a week. Story 11. I once woke up to find 4 black cats in my room. At the time, we only owned 3. It turned out my mom had mistaken a black cat outside for one of ours, picked it up, and brought it inside overnight. We let the cat back out because if it was calm enough to be carried, it probably belonged to someone. We never saw it again, so I assumed that was the right call. Oh wow, I just remembered something similar. When we were kids, we had a huge ginger tomcat who basically roamed the neighborhood freely. My sister and I sometimes slept with our bedroom window open in the summer, and the cats would climb in to cuddle. One night my sister woke up thinking our cat was on her bed, but it was actually a raccoon that had climbed in through the window. Story 12. This is part of what I remember from late last summer into early fall. For background, I had a really bad childhood, and to cope I developed intense daydreaming that I still struggle to control even with professional help. One day a family member who had abused me for years showed up at my apartment. He told me I should kill myself. He had a handgun with him. I told him I needed to run an errand and use that as a chance to get away. I contacted a police officer I trust. At first he didn't believe me, but when he came to my apartment, there was a gun on my coffee table. A gun I've never owned. My family member denied ever coming over. I can't afford a gun, and I wouldn't pass a background check due to my mental health history. But how did the gun get there? I experienced dissociative fugue states and dissociative amnesia when I was little. I was riding my bike around my house and came up to the garage. I remember seeing a white cat, about the size of a jaguar, casually walking out of the garage alongside my 2 cats. I froze in place. If I remember correctly, it looked at me briefly and then turned and walked away. I ran inside and told my whole family, but no one believed me except my grandpa, who said he had seen it too. Years later, he told me someone had shot the cat after I asked him if he remembered that day. Story 14. I once had a dream where I woke up in a place that was far more technologically advanced. I was in a room with people who clearly knew me and were expecting me to wake up. They told me I worked there and seemed genuinely happy to see me. One man showed me around the building, introducing me to people. We ate lunch outside and talked at length. I don't remember the exact details, just that it was about the work they did, what my role was, and why it mattered. Eventually, he led me to a long staircase that ended in something like water, except it wasn't really water. He told me it was time for me to go back. He said I needed to walk into it until I was fully submerged, and then I'd wake up. He said I could walk backward and keep looking at him if I was scared. I asked if it was real or just a dream, and he kept insisting it was real, but that I had to leave. He looked sad but kind. As I walked backward and the liquid rose, it felt warm. When it reached my chin and I took another step, I heard him change his words to, "This is real, but you need to wake up now." And I woke up instantly. It shook me so badly that I cried, and it still unsettles me to think about it. Story 15. I hired a vehicle for a countryside trip through a friend. He gave me the driver's contact information, and the driver told me the name of his vehicle. In our country, rental vehicles usually have their names displayed above the windshield. The vehicle I rented was called Raphael. The town is small, and I'm somewhat familiar with the rental vehicles there, but I had never heard of or seen a Raphael before. While waiting at a kiosk to meet the driver, I saw a vehicle labeled Raphael pull up. I stopped it and spoke to the driver, but he told me he had no rental reservations and that it was his first time in town. Then I looked down the street and saw another Raphael, the one I had actually rented. I thought, what are the chances? 2 vehicles with a name I'd never seen before, both here at the same time? I crossed the street quickly, but after a few steps I thought I should apologize to the first driver. When I turned around, there was nothing there. No vehicle. No driver. I froze, completely confused, and went straight to the driver I had actually rented from. I asked him if he'd seen the other Raphael. He told me that from his perspective, I hadn't spoken to anyone at all while standing at the kiosk. Story 16. Once, a classmate walked into the school cafeteria and stopped about 4 feet away from me, looking around like she was searching for someone. I waved at her, but she didn't react and walked away. Later that day, I asked her about it, and she said she hadn't noticed me at all. Combined with the fact that earlier that same week a teacher had failed to notice I was present in class the entire day, it genuinely made me wonder whether I could somehow make myself unintentionally invisible. Story 17. A truck in the slow lane collapsed onto the car in the middle lane directly next to the minivan my mom was driving me and my younger brother in on the Jersey Turnpike. The car was totally crushed, the truck was on its side, debris flew everywhere. I turned around to see as we drove away all of the cars coming to a halt behind the mess. The whole situation felt so surreal to me, the fact that we had just witnessed such a freak accident. What were the odds? Story 18. In a sense, it was so mentally unwell that I didn't want to live. My reality at the time was that nothing would ever improve, only decline. There was no future, no point. My husband would be sad, sure, but only briefly. I felt like a burden. He probably stayed with me out of obligation and would move on quickly and be better off without me. I believed I would never accomplish anything, never matter to anyone, never keep a job, never finish anything, never really live. Death felt comforting. It felt like relief. Recently, I bought extra pairs of glasses, cute ones, and a case to display them. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted more than the single pair I had to wear all the time, so I finally let myself do that. My husband told me it made him happy, a little proud, and honestly relieved, because I did something purely for myself, something unnecessary just because it made me smile. Because a few years ago, my reality was that I was worthless. I didn't deserve nice things. Buying anything for myself felt like wasting money. I refused to buy new clothes no matter how stained or torn mine were. I wore shoes so worn out they caused my feet to bleed. I believed I deserved dirty, ripped clothes and painful shoes. I didn't deserve better. Maybe not the kind of answer you wanted, but being that mentally ill means you're living in a completely different reality than the people around you. Story 19. I've always had extremely vivid dreams. For the past 6 months or so, I've even been able to control them pretty well. One night, I was dreaming when I was suddenly ripped out of it and woke up on my bathroom floor. I looked over and saw the bathtub overflowing, with my towel tossed into the water. I turned off the faucet and stood in front of the mirror. I didn't realize I was still dreaming until thousands of ants started pouring out of the sink drain. Then I woke up sitting straight up in bed. I got up to make coffee like I do every morning, and that's when I noticed my fingers bending involuntarily in ways they shouldn't. Everything around me became blurry, like wearing someone else's glasses. Then I woke up for real. But honestly, am I? That day I seriously questioned reality. Story 20. I used to have dreams that later came true. Hear me out. Everyone has experienced deja vu, but this felt different. I stopped talking about it because people always dismissed it, so instead I started writing my dreams down as soon as I woke up. I kept at it for years, almost giving up many times, until one day on my drive to work I passed a yellow Jeep. The driver was a red-bearded guy who waved at me. I also drove a Jeep. On the front of his car was a decorative airbrushed plate that said, "Aloha." I was instantly hit with deja vu. I wrote the scene down on a bank envelope in my car, then after work I dug through my journals. After hours of searching, I found it. 4 years earlier, I had written about the exact same dream. Yellow Jeep, red-bearded guy, aloha plate, driving to work. Even though I didn't have that job yet when I dreamed it. Seeing both descriptions side by side gave me the strangest feeling I've ever had. Story 21. When I was 16, I was visiting family in Lebanon without my parents. I was young and didn't yet understand how distorted politics and news can be. Israel declared war while I was there. I watched bombs fall around me. I saw schools, hospitals, food trucks, and people get bombed. When the US finally evacuated us, we were the last country to pull people out. The trip home was long. Lebanon to Cyprus by carrier, Cyprus to Germany on a C-17, Germany to New Jersey, then home. When I watched the news back in the US, they said they were bombing terrorist camps. That's when my faith in humanity died. I realized everything is a lie. But because of that, I feel like I can now see through the bullshit permanently. Story 22. This isn't something I directly witnessed, but I want to share it anyway because I wonder if anyone else has felt this. A few years ago, while finishing my thesis, I started having strange episodes, always while driving. Everything would feel normal. Then suddenly I'd think maybe I'd already had an accident at the last intersection and died without realizing it. I couldn't stop questioning whether I was really alive or if my brain was just creating reality while my body lay on the road. I had to pull over every time. Even when my SO was with me and telling me everything was fine, I still had to stop and switch seats. It was terrifying and disorienting. Story 23. The week after moving into a new house as a preteen, I woke up one night and saw a full moon beam shining directly into my bathroom window, looking exactly like a bridge. I walked toward it and almost removed the screen to see if I could rest my hand on it, like something out of a fantasy book. I convinced myself I was being ridiculous and went back to bed. To this day, I can't sleep through a full moon without wondering if that was my one chance to step into another world. Story 24, I swear I remember a dream from when I was a baby. I don't know exactly how old, just before long-term memories normally start forming. It's been with me my entire life. In the dream, I was my baby self, dressed in white, floating down the stairs at night with white pearls drifting around me. Everything else glowed green and purple. Vines were growing and moving around me. My mom was having people over downstairs. I don't think I made it all the way down. I know it couldn't have been real. I was floating, right? But if it was just a dream, I don't know why I remember it. It's the only memory I have that I can't explain. Maybe it was an out-of-body experience my baby brain held on to. I don't know. Story 25, a few years ago, I dreamed about doing a puzzle in my living room. A few days later, a relative gave me a puzzle as a gift, and I started working on it in the living room. When I remembered the dream, it felt like an incredibly unsettling deja vu moment. This exact thing happens to me. I'll dream about having a conversation or doing something, forget about it. And then days or a week later, the exact same conversation happens. Same people, same place, same clothes. When I realize it, I go into this hazy, dreamlike state, like when you've just woken up and reality feels blurry. Story 26. I woke up one night and saw a completely black hooded figure standing next to my bed, staring at me. I've had sleep paralysis before, but during those episodes I can't move. This time I could. I panicked, thinking someone had broken into the house. I screamed at my husband to wake up and scrambled out of bed on his side. He was confused but ran into the kitchen to grab the gun we kept there. The entire time I could still see the figure standing on my side of the bed. I yelled at it. "What the hell are you doing? What do you want?" It slowly turned its head and looked directly at me. I followed my husband into the kitchen and he went back into the bedroom. I was hysterical. He came back moments later and said, "There's no one in there." I don't know how else to explain it except that it felt like reality itself shifted, like the room tilted or slid for a second. I told him that wasn't possible. I knew I saw someone. I was close enough to touch it when I woke up. I was absolutely certain. He checked under the bed, the closet, the doors. Everything was locked. Our house is tiny. Even if someone had somehow gotten in through one of the painted shut windows, I would have seen them leave. I didn't sleep at all that night and barely slept for days after. Every time I started drifting off, I'd jolt awake in fear. It constantly felt like I was being watched or that someone had entered the room. That feeling lasted for months. It's terrifying to be told that something you know with every part of you was real, wasn't there. It made me feel insane. Story 27. This one is strange. I have a photographic memory. I literally recall events as still images or film, even from very early in my life. I can't fully control it though. I don't get to choose what I remember. Because of that, I've had what I'd call premonitory dreams. Dreams about the future. Not days or weeks ahead, but months or even years. One I remember perfectly took 7 years to happen. I was 12 when I dreamed it. In the dream, I asked a guy named James for the time in my college gym. He said 1439 and showed me his huge gold Rolex, bragging that it cost $31,000. 7 years later, in college, I was running late and asked someone for the time. As the words left my mouth, the dream replayed in my head. Same guy, same name, same watch, same answer. This has happened maybe 9 or 10 times in my life. I'm 24 now. Story 28. I woke up in the middle of the night once and saw something I still think about often. I was in 2nd grade. My grandmother was staying with us in the guest room, and my parents were out of town. I grew up in the South where things can get very Baptist. My mom made religion a huge part of everything, and at that age I was fully into it. I prayed often to see an angel. I'd heard Benny Hinn talking about seeing the Archangel Michael. That night there were no lights on. I woke up and my bedroom door opened silently. I noticed a faint glow in the hallway and assumed it was the light near the front door. Hoping my parents were home, I watched, but the light grew too large to be coming from there. I was terrified. The light pulsed slowly, growing brighter with each pulse. Eventually, it was brighter than the hallway light just outside my door. I screamed until my grandmother woke up and came into my room. Her door was right next to mine. The moment she opened it, the light vanished. I asked her if she had seen it through the cracks of the door before opening it. She said no. I'm agnostic now, and honestly, the only reason I'm not fully atheist is because of that moment. I still don't know what I saw. Story 29, I woke up in the middle of the night and, seconds later, heard what sounded like glass shattering. I got out of bed and looked out my window at the shops across the street. A car was halfway through the deli's front window, a ram raid in progress. I decided this required adult supervision and ran downstairs to my parents' room, telling my dad there was a car in the deli. He got up to look. Around then, I suddenly remembered I had a bong sitting on my windowsill, and I'd just invited my parents to come stare out that window. I sprinted back upstairs ahead of them and moved it. My dad eventually came up, looked out the window, and shortly after, the thieves jumped back into their car and drove off. The shop alarm was already going off, so we didn't call the police. Everyone just went back to sleep. I'm certain this happened. What makes me doubt myself is the list of things I've seen from that same window over the years. I've seen what looked like a man following a Japanese exchange student. I've seen smash and grabs, a cafe fire with someone fleeing, and even an ATM being wheeled out of a deli on a trolley. Whenever I mention these things together, nobody believes me, and eventually I start questioning myself too. Story 30. About 10 years ago, I was on a cruise ship between Finland and Sweden on the Baltic Sea, basically a floating bar. Around 3 a.m., I woke up in my cabin. It was completely dark outside, and I hadn't turned on any lights. I sat by the window and saw the lights of another ship in the distance. Then I noticed a bright light moving rapidly around that ship. It made sharp 90-degree turns, zipped back and forth, and seemed to be scanning it. Sometimes it disappeared behind the ship, then reappeared. I watched this for about 5 minutes before it vanished completely. It wasn't a helicopter, a drone, or a reflection. It moved far too fast and too sharply for anything man-made. And no, I wasn't drunk. Nobody believes me. Story 31. I was probably around 12 years old. I opened a brand new gallon of milk at a friend's house to pour cereal. I tilted the jug carefully, but nothing came out. I tipped it more, still nothing. I was standing there holding an open gallon of milk, completely upside down, and only a tiny trickle would come out. My brain short-circuited. I genuinely felt like I had broken the laws of physics. I stood there completely baffled, trying to process what I was seeing. Turns out the milk had been taken out of their unheated garage that morning. It was still about 90% frozen in the middle. Fell a hell of a way to start the day. Story 32. After my stepdad was kicked out of the house, we stayed with a friend. The next morning, my whole family, minus him, and that friend's family, went out together to try to have a normal, fun day. What led to him being kicked out was extremely traumatic for me, especially because I was the one directly targeted. I was in shock and couldn't really process what was happening around me. That day, we ran into a family from church. A mom, dad, and 2 boys. The older boy and I had a brief puppy love thing when we were about 9 or 10. It ended awkwardly, and after that we never spoke again. Seeing him right then struck me as deeply strange. Right after one of the most pivotal moments of my life, I randomly see this kid I once had feelings for and missed being friends with, completely unaware of what had just happened to me. I remember thinking, this doesn't feel real. I said hello to his dad and pretended not to notice him. He did the exact same thing to me. Story 33. Around 7 p.m. one evening, I was heading home when I saw something in the distance, about 100 meters away. It looked like the upper half of a woman floating across a railway track. She had no legs or lower body, just a torso and a black dress. When I got closer to home, I saw the same woman again, still about 100 meters away, this time crossing a street. The only other strange experiences I've had were while house sitting. Once I saw a child running around the backyard and heard giggling. When I went outside, no one was there. The yard was completely enclosed. The only exit was through the house. Another time, around 2 a.m., I heard 4 solid knocks at the door. They were soft, like a child knocking. There was a motion sensor light by the door that always triggered for cats, but it didn't turn on. When I opened the door, the light came on, and no one was there. Story 34. I saw a UFO when I was 15. Not a distant light in the sky, but an actual craft that flew maybe 60 feet above me on a clear, sunny June afternoon. It was far too close and clear to brush off. Nearly 20 years have passed, and I still can't explain what it was. Even now, we don't have technology that would make sense as an explanation. I've experienced other strange things in my life that could probably be chalked up to psychology or medical issues. Night terrors, that kind of thing. But this was different. This was something else entirely. Story 35. I was tripping on mushrooms and staring at a wall when it suddenly felt like I could see through it. On the other side was a man, I'm guessing God or something like that, sitting there. Then he noticed that I could see him. He reacted somehow, did something, and then vanished. Wall returned to normal. I swear, I saw God, or at least some kind of being from another dimension. I later read a similar story on another forum. Someone said they woke up to metallic, toolbox-like noises and opened their eyes to see a window-sized bright opening in their room. On the other side were two men in white hazmat suits working at computers in a brightly lit space. One of them noticed the person watching, rushed over, reached through the opening, did something with his hands, pulled back, and the opening closed. I don't remember what happened after that, but I'm pretty sure you saw that side of things. What was the room like?